somebody is lying, as up until this point, all signs have pointed to Nick Robertson starting the season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. A brand new report from Frank Saravalli has revealed some shocking details surrounding a Nick Robertson trade. We're going to break down that report and discuss what it can mean going forward, as what that report says might shock a lot of Leafs fans out there. So stay tuned for all that on this episode. But before I do, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you aren't subscribed, and we're super close to 14,000 subscribers. So if you enjoy the daily Leafs content, make sure to hit that button. Now, Darius, some crazy stuff is going on as Frank Saravalli is back at it again. And obviously take it with a grain of salt. Frank Saravalli is a pretty notable reporter, but he's been a little bit iffy with some of the Toronto Maple Leafs news lately. But we have to cover this because we thought that the Nick Robertson trade conversations were kind of put to rest after him having a great preseason so far, about him saying that he's fine being a Toronto Maple Leaf. He obviously hasn't, said that he loves Toronto and he wants to stay here forever, anything like that. But a lot of Leafs fans, obviously us included here, a little bit surprised by this report, and it has a lot of Leafs community up in arms. And let's just dive right into it. So Frank Saravalli had a lot of tidbits. There's also some other things surrounding Stephen Lorentz, which we'll get into as well. But Saravalli on Sportsnet 590 this morning says there's a good chance that Robertson is traded. There are some teams interested in him. If he doesn't get a top 6 role, the chances are he's traded. Also said Lorentz is likely to get a contract. We'll get into the Lorentz stuff after. But Darius, at this point, you can see this from Leafs Update. A fresh start is probably good for Robertson and the Leafs if a top 6 spot is the demand. And we'll get into Lorentz a little bit later. But, I hope this isn't really the case. I really liked watching Nick Robertson so far in the preseason. I know you're a huge Nick Robertson fan. But if his demand is a top 6 spot, might be a tough bargain for the Toronto Maple Leafs to be able to meet that demand.
Well, quite frankly, and no pun intended, Frank Saravalli hasn't really had a lot of news on the Leafs that he's gotten right during the summer, right? There's been a lot that's come out that he's kind of chimed in on, and not much of it has come to light. Obviously, famously saying that Mitch Marner was probably on the way out. A lot of people were saying that too, so I'm not going to hang that on him specifically. But with this one, to me, Nick Robertson, at least the way the lineups have been shaping up through training camp and what Craig Berube has been experimenting with, to me, I feel like Nick Robertson is kind of, penciled into the top 6 at this time anyway. And I think that is the plan. I feel like Craig Berube has been putting him in those situations so far. And obviously Brad Treliving throughout the summer was saying we envision this player as a top 6 player and a real good goal scorer for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, in my eyes, I think that he's probably going to end up still on the Leafs. I think that's the plan. I think that, maybe they're still shopping him. They're doing their due diligence for sure. But I think the plan is right now to keep him on the team. He'll probably have a pretty good season playing in the top 6. He looks really good in training camp so far, at least to me. And, he's carrying the puck really well with confidence. He had that great goal the other night, like really hardworking goal, back checking, steals the puck off the guy, comes in, scores, prime Nick Robertson goal right through the 5-hole quick release. So he's looked really good. I don't know if there's a reason for the Leafs to trade him because, I think they want to go with a heavier third line anyway. So it just wouldn't make sense if he wasn't in the top 6. Of course, that does make sense. And on the other side of things, though, quickly, just to chime in, when you really look at it, the big picture, when he came to training camp, a lot of his answers in terms of, the contract stuff and what reporters were asking him, he did have a lot of like robotic responses and very like almost scripted responses like he already thought of. So there is maybe something to that where, he's like, if this doesn't work out and if I don't get top 6, maybe I am on the way out. But to me, at least the way it's looked so far, I think that he is penciled into the top 6. He's probably in their plans to be in the top 6 because of the way the rest of the lineup is kind of going to shake out with what I think Craig Berube is planning.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's kind of what I meant in the intro when I said he didn't necessarily sound like he'd love to be in Toronto. There was a bit of a scripted vibe is the best way to put it, to where you see guys like even Mitch Marner out there was like super happy, loves being in Toronto, obviously has made that clear. But the Nick Robertson situation is more like, yeah, well, if I'm in the top 6, I can definitely at least find my role here. But I agree, he's probably penciled in as of this point. But it's interesting, whether or not you're a fan of Frank Saravalli or not, he says that there's a good chance that Robertson is still moved. He can maybe redeem his reputation from the classic him and Chris Johnson saying 5% chance that Marner is a Leaf to start the year. And that 5% came to fruition, as Marner is definitely going to start the year. So let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on that, because ultimately at this point, I want to see Nick Robertson play with the Toronto Maple Leafs this season. Even though I'm not the biggest Nick Robertson fan, I still think he has a ton to offer. Now, even if it's in a top 6 role, you have guys like Pat Chiaretti to man the third line. You have depth now, like Stephen Lorentz, which we'll get into a little bit here in a minute. But I think there's just enough depth on this team, even whether you factor in Easton Cowan and Nikita Grabenka, any of these guys or not. Nick Robertson is provides some much needed goal scoring, even though they should have tons of it come playoff time. They quite frankly, you can never get enough goal scoring, especially for this team.
Yeah, and he's a goal scorer, right? When you look at his stats from last year, despite what happened to him, every time he got put back in the lineup, it seemed like he scored or he had multiple goal game. Or, he still had quite a few points for, what happened. The fact that he wasn't playing a lot and every time he made a mistake, he was benched, right? So this is a player I think that can, sky's the limit right now. Like he has a really high ceiling offensively, and Craig Berube just wants him to play his game. He doesn't want him to do anything crazy or out of the ordinary. Play his game, right? Because he wants each line to have an identity. And I think that second line with Robertson on it, presumably, is going to be another scoring line, right? And when you look at the third line, Berube's really been experimenting with Tavares at center, Pacioretty on the wing, and we've seen a little bit of Holmberg on the other wing, which I love. I think that's a heavier line that has an identity, right? And when you look at the fourth line, there might be some movement. Where does Yarncroke end up as well, right? Like there's a lot that's still going to happen. Maybe a trade, couple guys go through waivers. We don't know exactly what's going to happen here, what's going to happen with Timmins, right? For example. So we don't know exactly what the lines are looking like, but that would make sense to me. Robertson in the top six where he can thrive offensively with maybe Nylander or something. And then you have a third line that's a little bit heavier. We know what the fourth line's about, but have a third line that's heavier, has an identity. So that makes sense to me. I think trading Nick Robertson, for me, at least personally, I don't know how you feel, Nick, but at this point, I'm kind of over it. I think he made the right decision finally signing that contract to come into training camp. And I think that the whole time, he's been in their plans and there's a new coach coming in. And, it sounds like he's a fan of Robertson, what he can bring to the table. So I think at this point, they're looking to hang on to him. Anything can happen at this point, right? But I think they're looking to hang on to him.
Yeah, it's a pretty late report in the camp. We're about a week and a bit away, a week and change away from opening night. So I'm more focused on how this team can win hockey games and get into the playoffs, even though it's probably a given at this point. They're still going to need to do that. So let us know in the comments your thoughts are on that. But the second part of this is Lorentz is likely to get a contract as well, and I like it. I mean, you have guys like Alex Steve, Abrazizi. You can see this here regarding Lorentz as a fine depth piece and good security in the event Steve's or Abrazizi get claimed. But I think Lorentz, we'll have a video on him later today. He's impressed. He's impressed a lot of people, and he deserves a contract at this point. Now, whether he's going to man the fourth line is up in the air, but I wouldn't mind them giving him a chance. And again, they have their preseason game tonight, and a lot of things are going to be, a lot of eyeballs are going to be on a lot of the different players, whether it's Easton Cowan, Gurbankin, Steven Lorentz when he gets into games. So ultimately, Darius, it seems like Lorentz is probably going to get a contract. I'm not too surprised by this, and we'll see. We mentioned in our video later today. I think we're both a fan of this move, and ultimately, I just want to see what he can offer, put on the plate for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Got to give him a shot.
Yeah, lots to watch tonight, and like you mentioned, like Easton Cowan, there's a couple guys fighting for spots tonight, and I think that's exciting because they're going to be trying really, really hard. I'm interested to see how the lineup kind of looks tonight because they're still trying out different things that might look this way come regular season. I feel like they're getting more comfortable with certain things and how the lineup looks. But yeah, like you mentioned, Steven Lorentz, we're going to have a video on it to go more in depth. I personally love the player. I already did before he became a Maple Leaf through a PTO. I think it's a good thing if the Leafs sign him. He brings a lot to the table. He's a Stanley Cup winner. The way he plays heavy. I think the Leafs should play more like him, throughout the lineup, just the type of player he is, always on pucks, throwing the body, finishing checks, really good penalty killer, right? He's really good at battles on the wall. So I would be a big fan of this move if they ended up signing him. And I like everything I've seen so far, even though it's a small sample size with the Leafs. But when you look at last season, what he was able to do for the Florida Panthers as well, this is a good player. And I think he can really help the Maple Leafs. Yeah,
a lot of good things about Lorentz, about everything. And they play a game tonight against the Montreal Canadiens where it's going to be more of a prospect showing. But at this point, it's still exciting to see. And I'm curious to see how Nikita Gurbankin tonight performs in front of Craig Berube. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Nick Robertson situation. And let us know, do you want to see Nick Robertson at Toronto Maple Leaf, or do you think they're going to trade him? Thank you guys for watching. So hit the subscribe button as well. We're very close to 14,000. We'll see you guys later today.